Well, let's get to our first topic of discussion today. Now, between 2020 and 2021, the number of tech startups in Africa tripled to around 5,200 companies. Well, just under half of these are fintechs, which are making it their businesses to disrupt and, of course, augment traditional financial services. Well, analysis shows that African fintechs have already made significant inroads into markets with estimated revenues of about $4 billion to about $6 billion in 2020, and average penetration levels of between 3 to 5%, excluding South Africa. Now, these figures are in line with the global market leaders. And despite a slowdown in funding in line with global trends, we expect significant growth and value creation to lie ahead for fintech, the fintech industry in Africa. Well, cash is still used in around 90% of transactions in Africa, which means that fintech revenues have huge potentials to grow. Now, if the sector overall can reach similar levels of penetration to those seen in maybe Kenya, a country with one of the highest level of fintech penetration in the world, we estimate that Africa's fintech revenues could reach 8 times the current value by 2025. Well, let's discuss this emerging hotbed for investments in the continent. I'm being joined live in the studio. He is a co-founder and the chief executive officer of Kuda Group, Mr. Babs Ogundeyi. Thank you so much. It's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I saw that reading out my introduction already. You were looking at it and making some notes. But before I go there, what is your general assessment now of a global economic outlook, of course, with relation to the fintech industry?
Yeah, I think, as you said earlier on, the tech industry generally has seen a great bull run since 2020 to date. But of course, globally, I think there's sort of been a general slowdown, especially from likely investors who typically foil technology companies. But having said that, it just means there's more focus on building sustainable businesses rather than chasing growth. So, I think it's kind of a good thing. There's a bit of recalibration in the mindset of founders, which I think in the long run will benefit the industry generally. And that includes fintech as well.
Now, considering Africa and, of course, Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, in particular, has been late entrants into the market. Now, what are the market potentials of fintech industry in this space?
I've always felt, even though we've had significant traction in recent times, we're still barely scratching the surface. For example, at Kuda, we started in Nigeria. Our mission is to provide financial services globally to all Africans. But even in Nigeria, we're approaching 5 million customers. Wow. But there are potentially 195 million other customers to address. So, we're really at the infancy of sort of this digital revolution. So the potential is enormous. But so far, I think, there's been a lot of, I would say we can be satisfied with the start that we've made in the industry.
Interesting stuff. So I would now want to ask you, what are the challenges you've been through, in this competitive financial market? How were you able to scale through?
I think building a business anywhere in the world is challenging. It's, of course, in Africa, we have our own peculiar challenges, but that's just the nature of business, and that's what makes it interesting. So especially when you look at fintech, it's a highly regulated environment, so you have to deal with regulatory challenges. It's also highly competitive. It's one of the oldest industries. And I wouldn't say, at least for us at Kuda, I wouldn't say we're coming to completely change what has been done, because I think there's been a lot of good that's been done over the years. But there are opportunities that perhaps sort of older players haven't tapped into. and that's why we exist. So there are challenges, but there are also opportunities. And it will get better as we go along. So you take things like even just the general infrastructure in terms of power, network. It does affect the way we do business, especially from a tech perspective. And we've seen great improvements with that over time, which of course translates to better service that we're able to offer. So it's still very exciting in spite of all the challenges.
I would like you to share some attributes that makes you stand out, unique, different. What makes you different from others?
So I think, if you look at it, the population of Africa and the demography of it is largely youthful. 70% of the population, I would say, are under 30. So essentially what we have is we have a very young workforce. So essentially we are building for a customer base that we have great understanding of. So we're able to build products that, they really want. So we're super customer centric. And the pillars that we look out for is to be accessible, to be affordable, and to be rewarding. So everything we do evolves around those three things. So if we execute that well, I think naturally we will get sort of significant adoption, which fortunately, since we launched in 2019 in Nigeria, we've seen sort of great traction.
Sounds good. But the Nigerian banking and, of course, the financial space, some perceive it to be overregulated. Well, some say that. So how does, Kuda and, of course, fintech cope with the demands of the regulatory system? How are you being regulated? How do you cope with regulations, where multiple agencies will come up and different laws and all of that, levies and all? How have you been able to cope?
I mean, I think, we have to embrace regulation. It's there for a reason. It's there to protect consumers. So, it's just something you have to work with. And, how do you cope is just basically factoring it into your business plans and building strong relationships with the regulators, just so everybody has good understanding of what each party is trying to do. So, it's a challenge, but at the same time, I think it's needed, and we just need to embrace it and work with it. So yeah, but I think, we are, I wouldn't say it's over-regulated, but, it's well regulated, I would say, rather than over regulated. Yes.
Well, that's good for security, though. But the mortality rate is high when you look at the figures that we see coming, and across the fintech space. Now, what can you adduce as reasons for this trend? That is one. And how can we change this? How can it be reversed?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, building a business from zero is inherently risky. There are businesses that are created every day, and most do not survive.
Yes.
So it is natural that you have sort of a high mortality rate. But in doing that, we also learn a lot. So I prefer to look at sort of the positives of actually attempting to build a business and the learnings that we can gain from those that failed. So it's not peculiar to fintech, I would say. And then obviously for us, at Kuda, we do a lot of things to try to mitigate failure. Obviously, we have the right team, an experienced team that have sort of built similar businesses before all over the world, and we just make sure that we anticipate certain things that could lead to failure and just build around them. But there are no guarantees in the world. But at the same time, we're very bullish and very confident on our vision and sort of what we've built so far and what is to come.
Well, I like that. Now let's talk about factors around dirt in some like expertise and like poor mentoring, experience in this field, and ineffective market strategy and all of that. How has this contributed to the growth rate? Of course, the slow growth rate that we see in the fintech space, technical expertise, poor mentoring, all of this. How is it affecting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I totally agree with that, or at least to that extreme. I think there's room for improvement, certainly. But again, you only improve when you do something. So the more companies that are created, I think the more we learn, the more we improve skill set, the more jobs are created, and it will become a good thing. And also people will have the opportunity to sort of work in companies outside of the country as well. We, example at Kuda, are also mixing foreign talent with local talent. So that integration and that sort of blend also helps to spread knowledge.
Yeah.
Some of our team members have gone on to work for other local companies as well. So all of these things create a natural ecosystem of sort of organic knowledge building that can only be beneficial to the industry sort of in general.
Let's talk money now. Let's talk money. Looking at your financial reports, some operating loss of about 6 billion naira. Now, how has the company moved from that pole to achieve profitability? What happened? What changed?
Well, I mean, we're a 3-year-old company,
Yes.
starting from zero. I think on average, I would estimate traditionally it would cost significantly more than 6 billion to start a bank from scratch. I estimate it to be in and around sort of 100, 200 billion naira. So, we don't look at it as a loss necessarily. We've basically invested that money. We've built a very strong brand. We've acquired a significant amount of customers. We're now looking to expand to other geographies. So if you look at put all of that into perspective, we have a very strong foundation to build a sustainable business on top of. And we knew this at the beginning, which is why we went out and raised quite a decent amount of capital. The group has raised almost $100 million in capital, which I'm sure if you use the current sort of official rate, is still is significantly more than 6 billion. So we're well covered to make that investment. But over time now, from sort of over the next few years, we're very confident that our business will be tremendously sustainable and highly profitable. But the initial building does cost money.
Indeed. Increasing smartphone penetration and, of course, advancement of technology is what we're talking about. And among the fast pace, let's look at digital payments, digital banking, and, of course, fintech and payment services. A lot of them. And they are all smart payment solutions. Very interesting stuff. But where do you see all of this in maybe the next 5 or 10 years to come? Where do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, as the price of hardware drops, the price of access to internet drops, networks improve, there's more stability. We're going to see an even bigger usage of digital products. So as I said at the beginning, we're literally right at the start. We're barely scratching the surface. I think the next 10 years is going to be crucial. I believe digital financial services will become mainstream over the next 10 years. So it's not, I don't think we're going to be hearing things like, a digital bank in 10 years' time. We're going to hear a bank, but it is only digital. So it's going to become mainstream. So, the way I look at it is prepare now, because in the future, whether we like it or not, the biggest financial institutions will be digital first. So if you are the front runner of digital financial services now, naturally, when that time comes, you will be the biggest financial institution. So it's exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing where Kuda stands in that time.
So what should government do now to leverage on the potential of course, fintech, for accelerating particularly financial inclusion? That's what central bank has been talking about for a while, and we're here to achieve that. And of course, optimize the further benefits of digital technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to start with, I think government, especially in Nigeria, has been, working and has been listening. There have been various sandboxes that have been sort of introduced. But I think the most important thing really is dialogue. I think the more space there is on the table for innovators and of fintech companies, the better understanding there will be. And I think, once that is done, there will be a natural sort of various natural solutions and sort of working together that would aid the future of digital financial services. So, I mean, for me, the number one would definitely be dialogue and just, better understanding on both sides.
Sounds very interesting. Any challenges? You see challenges one way or the other?
There's always challenges. You have generational understanding. Typically, for example, regulators they've been in the game for a long time. A lot of innovators are quite young, so just by default, you have that sort of age gap, that generational gap. And yeah, but we can bridge it. So we just need to keep working at it, be patient, and as I said, dialogue is very, very important. With that, everything is solvable.
Interesting conversation. I've been speaking to Mr. Babs Ogundeyi. He is a co-founder and chief executive officer, Kuda Group. Thank you so much. It's good to have you on the show, making us understand all of this. I know this is the way to go. We must go digital. That's the way to go. COVID has shown us that that's just the way to go, and we just must move on along that line. Thank you so much. We hope to have you subsequently, to follow up developments around Kuda and, of course, the fintech space.
Thank you for having me.
All right, then. Welcome.